Hello and welcome to my April wrap up. First of all, I still do not have my microphone, so if you can hear the crickets in the back, I apologize. It's Australia and it's nighttime. There's not much I can do about it. And second of all, I do have pink hair. It's temporary, but it's very pretty, so we're enjoying it. We're enjoying every moment. I think this is my natural hair color. In April, I read 4 books, 1 graphic novel and 1 short story, and unfortunately only 1 book was 5 stars. And I'm still on the hunt to find the book that gives me that feeling, and the first book I read in April did give it to me. As I said, I haven't seen it again. The first book is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This book follows Iris, who lives with her mother, who is very unhealthy and has been drinking a lot ever since Iris's brother has been conscripted into the war, because the gods have awakened after a very long time and they are calling everyone to come fight. And so there's a goddess that sings people to her side, and she has taken Iris's brother. Now, Iris has inherited from her grandma a typewriter that she loves, and she is actually a journalist, and so she writes all these letters to her brother, and when she sends them off, she puts them in her closet, and every morning the letters have disappeared. Unbeknownst to her, Roman Kit, her rival at work, has been receiving those letters, and so he starts writing back. At work, they really don't like each other because Roman comes from a very affluent, wealthy family, whereas Iris has had to drop out of school and only got this job by winning a competition, and so there is that rivalry between them. But they both care so much. They both have so much care within them. Obviously Iris mostly for her mom and her brother, and then Roman, we see that he cares a lot for Iris, and when she disappears he is very, very concerned. He's like, where has she gone? And when he finds out that she has gone to become a journalist in the war, he follows her. I think my favorite thing about this book is that it's unexpected. So when it opens up with like the gods and the war and all that, I definitely expected this book to be like medieval age. It's actually set in the 20s, so it's a lot more modern than I thought it would be. Like, there are trams, there are typewriters, she has a phone, stuff like that, and yet it makes sense. It's clear that the author has actually set rules and a system for this world that she has thought out, and she follows those rules. She doesn't just go crazy and is like, because it's magic, which is something that I've been really bothered by recently. And so this is a book that works. Is book 1 of a duology. I haven't read book 2 because this one actually broke my heart. It did. There are a few plot twists, and I did figure one out, and I was sending like voice messages to my friend who told me to read it, and like throughout the whole like last 20% going, oh my god, I think this is what it is, this is my theory. I was right. So I'm like a genius. But I think the strength of this book is in its writing and its relationships rather than necessarily the plot. The plot is really, really good, but the characters are definitely what drives it. The next book I read is Sophie and the Bone Song, and this book, I couldn't tell you when it's set, but a really long time ago in this magical world, but also magic has kind of gone extinct, and there are people that have access to magic through papers, which are kind of like spells. So like people can use a paper to like heat up their house, or like a paper to like glamorize themselves, stuff like that. But the real magic is for the witches who have disappeared and no one has seen them since, because many years ago the king, I believe, forced the witches into making a lot of those papers, and so the magic went awry and it backfired against a lot of people. So they were like, oh, the king hates us, and this was an evil plan all along. So the king has now created a guild of musicians, and it's, I believe, 5 musicians, and they're the only ones that get to compose and create music. All other musicians of the land have to like perform their songs or older songs. They can't make new music, and every once in a while those musicians of the guild have to choose an apprentice. Sophie's father is known for playing the bone lute, and he is the lutist of the guild. Very well done, very well loved, but he was very cruel to Sophie growing up, but she doesn't see it that way. She sees it as he is teaching me to be the best I can because she wants to be his apprentice and she wants to be the next, is it lutist? Lute player for the guild, except it all goes wrong when another girl shows up who has never played the lute or composed a song, shows up and wins the role of apprentice. And then Sophie's father dies the next day. So now that Lara has won the role in the guild, she has to go and do like a bit of a tour and introduce herself to all the other like towns and stuff. And so Sophie decides to go with her kind of as a teacher because she doesn't have anyone to teach her since Frederick, Sophie's father, has passed away. And Sophie also thinks that there's magic involved. This book was fun and enjoyable, and like the world again was well thought out, and there are magic rules. It was just a bit too predictable. Like all the plot twists were like been there, done that. I like that it was sapphic, but aside from that, there was really nothing that stood out to me, and possibly it was a disservice to the book to read it immediately after Divine Rivals, but I think that would have been a disservice to any book. Moving on, I read The Tea Dragon Society, which was actually like graphic novels, and I usually don't really read graphic novels just because I find them a bit harder to get into when you only have like maximum of 50 pages, and this is no exception. Like I don't really remember anything about like the characters' names. I remember the plot but not the characters' names, but basically our main character exists in this world, and then she finds like a little tea dragon, and then she takes it back to his owners, and she finds out that they used to have this tea dragon society, but it's an old art that is dying, and so there are only 2 tea dragon artists left. And so she becomes also kind of like an apprentice, and she meets another girl there who is also learning how to be a tea dragon artist. And they also form a friendship and possibly a relationship. There are more books, so I think they will get together later, but I just loved the art and I just needed something fun to read, and I couldn't get into any book, so it was just like a fun time. It's a me thing. I just can't really connect with graphic novels as much as I wish I could. I'm also doing kind of like a challenge with the indie bookstore Boundless Books in Perth, and so each month they have a prompt, and for April it was read a book that has been translated to English, and I tried so many different books and I just couldn't get into any, and eventually I read Kiki's Delivery Service. I actually ended up listening to the audiobook, which was a bad idea really because I kept on falling asleep and having to repeat it. If you know me, you know that I fall asleep immediately if somebody is telling me a story, which is not great if I want to listen to an audiobook. But I actually have never watched Kiki's Delivery Service. It is now high on the list of movies to watch. I've been watching a lot of movies. I'll have to do like a movie wrap up soon, but I really liked it. It's so cozy and pleasant, and like she's so young. She's 13 and she's like has to go away from see, I always like, you know, you give a book synopsis when you're talking about it, but I'm like, what if somebody hasn't watched or read the book and they don't want to know what it is? If you don't, you can skip. But this follows Kiki, who is a witch, and witches don't really exist anymore, and so when witches come of age at 13, they have to travel and get to a different town and then just like start a life there, like offer a service based on whatever like magical ability they have alone, and they don't accept like payment as like money. They just accept like favors. I'm just like, how are they meant to like find a house and stuff like that? I guess the economy was different in Kiki's time, but Kiki ends up finding a cute little sea town. She's never seen the sea before, and she has her little cat friend, and she meets this older lady who's a baker who gives her a home, and she starts Kiki's Delivery Service, where she delivers things for people, and it's just such a heartwarming story, and I can tell why everybody loves it. And I have actually, since finishing it, I have revisited it to fall asleep. When I can't sleep, I'll just like play it in the back. I then read 2 books that are so different. I read Galatea by Madeline Miller, and this is a short story. It's 30 pages, and it's not a retelling. It's more so a imagined continuation of the story of Galatea. And that is actually a myth that comes from Metamorphoses, written by Ovid, which is a part of that book is Orpheus telling stories to Hades to try to convince him to give him Eurydice back. And so he tells him the story of Pygmalion, who is this incredible sculptor who hated women and like women are wicked and all that. So he ends up sculpting a perfect woman, and then at some sort of festival he prays for the gods to give him that woman, and then Aphrodite brings her to life. Now many people have reimagined this. Paris Paloma in her music video Good Girl, she reimagines it visually, but it was actually it was reimagined by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, which is something I learned, and the reason why I read this and I learned all of this is because I was working on an assignment, and that's what my last video was. It was me discussing and comparing Pygmalion and Galatea with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So this is a very short story because the original story ends with Pygmalion and Galatea having a baby, and then we just never really hear from them again. And so in this book it's kind of said that Pygmalion has put Galatea in a mental institute because she keeps on trying to run away and he doesn't let her see their child, and it's basically how Galatea decides to escape. This was like, it was just, Madeline Miller is a really talented author. I'm gonna share a fact about me, which is that I read Circe when I was 15 and I really did not like it. I've always said I need to reread it because I just think there was like a glitch in the system or something. But I have read most of, what's the Achilles book called? That one. I've read most of it, and it has such beautiful lyrical writing that I'm genuinely surprised that I didn't like Circe. Her ability to pack a punch in just 30 pages is so impressive, and it's a story as old as time, and we'll read it again and again. I finally read a book that is actually out today, which is A Game of Cat and Witch by Ruby Rune, and Ruby is someone that I actually follow on Instagram, and so I've been kind of following her journey all throughout writing this book and publishing it, and I was very kindly sent an ARC. So this is a witch X shifter book, and I've never read a shifter story, and I haven't really read anything like paranormal, not paranormal, what's the word, like kind of like fantasy in this sense. I read like Mates by Ali Hazelwood a few months ago, but that's really it. But this one follows Avery, who is a witch at this like very fancy witch school, and witches coexist with humans, but they're stuck on islands that have like wards around them because otherwise shifters will get them, and like shifters will kill them and stuff. And Avery has not been able to conjure a familiar, which is like every witch has a familiar. Didn't know that. And she's from a really fancy family, and so she's like, I can't be the one person who can't conjure a familiar. So she ends up doing blood magic, and she accidentally conjures up Felix, who is a cat shifter. So he can shift into human, he can shift into a cat, and he can shift into like a monster form. This book is fun and entertaining, and it's very different to what I usually read. So I really didn't expect to like it as much as I did, but I did, and it was fun, and Avery and Felix develop a relationship. It's very smutty, so do keep that in mind while going in. My only thing is, I do wish the story had a bit more of a conclusion than it did, because the way it ends is kind of cliffhangery in terms of the plot. So like Avery and Felix's romance is wrapped up, but the plot is kind of kept open because there's going to be a book 2. But in book 2, Avery and Felix are side characters, and we're following a different main couple. And so my only thing is, I wish we could have had like a separate plot line, or like a different part within this bigger plot, because this one just felt a bit unfinished. But aside from that, I really enjoyed it. So these are my books for April. I am currently on a May challenge called Can I Find My Next 5-Star Read? Because I've been a lot of books. I've DNF'd so many books. I can't get into anything. I'm not enjoying a lot of stuff. So we're on a 5-star challenge. I might make a video for that. Who knows? And you'll get to see like the pink hair fading throughout. But thank you so much for watching, and aren't you proud of me for getting this wrap up done in May and not like August? Bye. Love you. Thank you for watching.